Welcome, everybody. It is the 18th of June, 2020. I'm your host, Justin, and as always, I'm joined by Perry.
Hey, Justin. I know my pickup lines are normally pretty cheesy, but I got to say, you're looking pretty Gouda tonight.
Nice.
You know what I'm saying?
Nice. It gets better with age, you know?
Nice. Man, we could end it there. Good podcast, dude.
Oh, man. In case you guys didn't know, this is our second take, which you don't know because you didn't see the first take. That's why that was a joke and funny.
Also, Gouda gets better with age. That's why I was laughing.
Yes.
Okay.
I thought that part was the obvious part.
I don't know, man.
So
I just work here.
I know you know this, Perry, but I'm over here drinking a Michelada.
Yeah.
And I've been hooked on these Modelo Micheladas. They got a couple different flavors. One spicy, and they were out of it today when I went to the store. But fortunately, when I ordered our stickers, I also received hot sauce from the company and with the stickers. No idea why, but it goes great in a Michelada.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
It's really weird. Random hot sauce.
Yeah, but I mean, it turned out for the world works in mysterious ways, Barry, but it all worked out in the end.
I'm drinking a key lime LaCroix.
Ooh.
There is no hot sauce involved in that.
You should try it.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
No.
Nope.
Not happening.
What are we doing today, Justin?
We're going to be talking about the AFC North and all the teams that are involved in that.
Well, all fantasy relevant players, at least mostly. I don't think we're diving too terribly deep. Once we wrap up this series of covering all the divisions, we'll be doing our kind of deep sleeper episodes and that sort of thing where we'll get very deep in some of these players. But we're just kind of covering the obvious fantasy relevant players on each of these teams.
I did my best not to laugh when you said that. Make sure you guys subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us, subscribe, whatever the app says at the top when you click on us. Do that for Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and basically everywhere else where our podcast is, which is everywhere.
And Justin, if people subscribe on YouTube and comment on this video, what could they win?
You are automatically entered to win Hall of Famer Andre Reed from the Buffalo Bills, #Bills Mafia. And I was telling
his jersey.
Yeah, his jersey. You don't get him. I have not worked that out yet. Maybe in the future sometime we may be able to do some sort of giveaway like that.
I can confirm that it was touched by him, though, because it's autographed.
Yeah, and I was telling Perry this. Not a requirement, but something I would love is whoever wins this, just put yourself through a table. Just Bills Mafia it out, live it.
Every time I hear you say it, I can't help but laugh. I'm just asking, will you please put yourself through a table? It sounds like you're telling him to take a hike.
I know, but I'm not. I want to give you a jersey, in fact.
Speaking of taking a hike, I just got back from a backpacking trip.
Nice.
It was wonderful. It was a little rainy, but very relaxing. I feel rejuvenated, exhausted when I got back. That's for sure. But it was a really good trip. What about you? What have you been up to other than Micheladas?
No, that's it. Just Micheladas, a lot of them. It's been a rough time.
What a life.
No, I've been working a lot, but I'm finally starting to get to the slow season for my work, which sounds weird. Yeah.
In the military.
Yeah, we have a slow season for my job, at least. So I'm actually going to be taking some vacation time here and just relaxing a little bit. spend some time with family, stuff like that.
Good for you. Good for you. Okay. Well, I'll just jump right into the news here. We'll get started with some actual fantasy football talk. I think that's why you guys are all here. Oh. So first piece of news is some bad news. First major injury news that we've had so far this offseason. Deebo Samuel, wide receiver for the 49ers, broke his foot on Thursday while practicing with teammates in Nashville. It's a pretty serious break. He's going to have surgery immediately. It's also it's a type of injury that seems to nag around for a while. It's called a Jones fracture, if you guys want to check it out. Justin and I were just talking. The foot, like a broken foot or turf toe or a ligament, plantar fasciitis, something like that, it seems to linger, right? They're saying that he should be ready around the beginning of the season. It makes me a little worried. Now, I do think that his ADP will start to drop, and you can get him as like your fourth or even maybe fifth wide receiver, depending on how far it drops. I have no problem taking Deebo Samuel as my fourth or fifth wide receiver in almost any league, with the thought that if he comes back, I'm getting like basically a number 2 wide receiver for free. Now, that being said, do not draft him as your number 2 wide receiver. That would be terrifying, very inadvisable. Now, Justin, is there a wide receiver on this team that you would recommend as a possible like big time winner here with Deebo being out?
So, I mean, I don't think there's one clear cut guy here. I think with San Francisco, though, they got 3 guys that are wide receivers there that are all benefiting from this. You have Brandon Ayuk, the rookie that they just drafted in the first round. So obviously they believe in this guy, and he's a tremendous talent. So he's going to benefit if there's any sort of time missed. But also Jalen Hurd, who they drafted, I believe, early second round last year, who was injured for the entire season. He's going to be playing this year. So both of those guys are probably the most 2 like physically talented. And then you have Taylor coming back from an injury as well. He's more of a slot guy, and he just will probably see some added opportunities out of this to make it onto the field.
Yeah. All 3 of these guys, you could literally get very, very, very late. Brandon Ayuk may be going a little sooner than like the last round, but if I were taking a shot on a guy, it would be Brandon Ayuk for sure. Okay, moving on here. News out of the Vikings camp right now is that Justin Jefferson will be playing the majority of the time in the slot. He played 78% of his snaps last season in college from the slot. He was very effective from that spot. That's really exciting for me.
Yeah, I think we actually talked about that, like how effective he was in the slot.
Yeah, I was a little worried that they were going to force him outside. That's not going to be the case. It looks like Adam Thielen is going to be playing outside a whole lot more, whereas Justin Jefferson is going to be playing in the slot a whole lot more. I've been very high on Justin Jefferson since he was drafted. This only moves him up further for me. He's quickly becoming he might be the number 1 rookie wide receiver that I want right now. It's pretty close between him and Jerry Jeudy. I think Jerry Jeudy is much probably a better talent, but the situation is very, very good in Minnesota for Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think he's becoming my top rookie wide receiver.
Yeah, just based on what the opportunity, the situation that he has right there at he's geared and ready to go.
And so this is exactly what we were talking about when we were doing our pre-NFL draft, like talking about these players, and we're like, I might like this player or this player, but I need to see where they land, the landing spot, and the role they're filling for their opportunity. Because he definitely was not in my top 2. I don't think even my top 3 wide receivers for talent-wise. Probably number 4. But now he may be the top fantasy producing rookie.
I still have Jerry Jeudy ahead of him just based on Jerry Jeudy's situation is also very good.
Yeah.
So I think I'd still go Jerry Jeudy first, but I would be very happy getting Justin Jefferson, and I can get him a lot later as of right now. So moving on here, more Broncos news actually. In fact, so far coming out of the Broncos camp is running back Royce Freeman is going to have to work to keep his third running back job. That's not good news for Royce Freeman. It sounds like there's a chance he could be cut. I don't think that he'll be cut. It's not that he's been completely ineffective. I just think that they're probably a little bit disappointed in the draft capital they spent on him, where Philip Lindsay, they spent almost nothing and has been incredible. They went and got Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, I was going to say this great for fantasy owners, though.
Yeah, so I was worried not so much about Melvin Gordon, but I was a little worried about Philip Lindsay just losing even more time to Royce Freeman.
Yep.
At this point, this makes me pretty excited for both of them. It's going to be one of those. I don't really want one of these guys as my number 1 or number 2 running back, but I'd be happy with them as my number 3 possibly. If I could get Melvin Gordon or Philip Lindsay as my number 3 running back, I'd be pretty psyched. Melvin Gordon is moving up a lot of draft boards though, so that might be kind of hard to do. But Philip Lindsay is still a really, really good value, especially with this news.
I'm excited because I did say when we did our AFC breakdown, I expected it to be a 65-30 split with 5% being Royce Freeman.
That's sounding pretty accurate. We'll see how it plays out. I mean, I honestly I'm not really willing to completely write Philip Lindsay off as just the second back and only getting 30% of the work. The guy has done nothing to lose the job since he's started. He's only been very good since he's been there. And so, I mean, if he comes out and keeps doing it, Denver doesn't care about fantasy, right? They care about winning. And Philip Lindsay gives them the best chance to win. They're going to keep giving him the ball. So
I completely agree with you. I just think that Melvin Gordon's going to outperform him.
Maybe. I mean, if the inefficiencies of last year continue, he won't.
But I don't think that's the case. I think that's more of the team he was on.
Hey, as a Broncos fan, I want Melvin Gordon to be successful. So I hope you're right. Me too. I got one last piece of news here. Kareem Hunt has been training with the wide receivers on the Browns during their virtual meetings. This is cool. I really like this. He's proven that he's a very, very good pass-catching running back. And if they want to get him involved more in the wide receiving core, that's good news for Nick Chubb. That means that they're going to continue to use Nick Chubb as the primary ball carrier and use Kareem Hunt as more of this gadget guy, right? Get him lined up out in the wide receiver. He's done it before, here and there in games and been very successful. And if they want to really use him that way, that's super smart. It's just going to give more weapons to Baker Mayfield. It keeps all the best players on the field rather than having to decide, are we going to start our amazing running back Nick Chubb or our amazing running back Kareem Hunt?
Dude, I'm excited to watch Jarvis Landry throw a touchdown pass to Kareem Hunt.
Could happen. Yeah, it definitely could happen. So
Jarvis Landry played quarterback.
Yeah, this is great news. This is good news for Nick Chubb. I'm a Nick Chubb truther. I really like Nick Chubb. I was worried that he was going to lose a bunch of touches to Kareem Hunt because Kareem Hunt was very effective once he came back last season.
We'll talk more about that, though, here shortly, Perry.
Sorry. But I'm excited. Okay.
All right, I got some news no one cares about. I forgot to put this in the news no one cares about, but it came to my mind that I had seen this, and so I'm going to share this gem with you guys. So I saw a video on, I believe, ESPN talking about Julian Edelman's hand speed training, and someone's literally throwing playing cards from poker cards at him, and he's catching them one at a time and with his hand. It was one of the least impressive things I've ever seen, and I really hope that's not how he's getting ready for the season. It was just like, why is this in the news, and why did he put this video out? It reminded me of Jameis Winston's boxing exercise thing where they had the punching bag, they're swinging at him as he avoids it. Just horrible. Just train with football, guys.
Train with football.
Yeah.
I'm gonna step in right here with some it's a little bit related. Lamar Jackson was training with football on the beach.
Yeah.
And ran into a stationary jet ski and almost hurt himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
He did not, thank God, hurt himself.
And train with football on a football field, guys.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I should have been more specific there.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Gronk and Shaq are hosting an online party to raise money for social justice. I don't even know how that works, but I want to be in on this party.
Yeah. How exclusive is this?
I will look into it.
Can we get clock management to the Shaq Gronk party?
I assume no matter how exclusive, clock management's getting an invite. Josh Gordon applied for reinstatement.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for the guy, man.
Me too. But at this point, like, outside of like his life and stuff, fantasy wise, like I just don't think that it's relevant anymore. Like, I don't think he's gonna be a big impact wherever he goes.
Yeah, my advice to all of you is when he does get reinstated, and when he does sign with the team, don't buy into the hype. Yeah, it's just not worth it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree.
I hope he's successful though, but I also hope that the league just lets the guy smoke weed, please.
LA teams have been selected, both of them, to do Hard Knocks this year. So you have the LA Rams, and who's the other?
The LA Chargers.
Oh yeah, they exist.
Yeah.
The Chargers will be doing it. So I think it'll be kind of weird to watch, like with like COVID-19 going on, just kind of see how the teams are training with that.
Yeah, should be interesting. I mean, there are players coming out right now that are testing positive for coronavirus, including Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, which I think, so someone brought this up. It was big news. A lot of people were avoiding, or Zeke started falling down people's rankings when this news came out. But like, yeah, not far, like a spot or two in ADP. But regardless, like, he's going to be completely healed from this by the time the season starts. And he likely, I mean, they don't know for sure exactly how it works yet, but it's suspected that you can't catch it twice. So he likely won't get sick from this during the season.
Right. Hope so. Hope that's true.
Yeah. And one more thing. CMC and his father surprised a military father on a Zoom call as a Father's Day present.
Right on. I could pull out his father's jersey right now.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty cool that CMC and his dad did that, though.
Yeah. His dad was my favorite player growing up. And I have a jersey from his dad that was worn in game.
And that's the next... No.
No, it's not. But yeah, Ed McCaffrey, man, he is my favorite player growing up. That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's all the news no one cares about. So
I care about that news.
Yeah, I know, but it's not fantasy relevant. That's the whole segment, Perry.
I care.
I know. I mean, I cared about several things in this news no one cares about, but it's not fantasy relevant.
All right, fine. All right.
Like Julian Edelman catching the cards. I really cared about that.
All right. Are you ready to jump into this, Justin?
I'm ready.
Okay, me too. Why don't we do it the same way we did it last one, where we'll do by players? So we'll start with the quarterbacks. Why don't you go first?
All right, so I'm going to start with the Steelers. So Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger, Big Ben. I'm sure you guys know that. I hope so.
Never heard of him.
He went down early in 2019 with elbow injury, the Tommy John injury, which required surgery, obviously. and he just recently started throwing a football again after recovering from that surgery. He's 38 years old now, and he's coming back from this surgery. He did not play exceptionally well, or even well, before the surgery or before the injury, even though we had a very small sample size. I'm probably avoiding him in any sort of one quarterback league, and in a two quarterback league, he's probably not in that top half of the second quarterbacks, in my opinion. Especially with the risk I think are there as a 38-year-old quarterback coming back from an injury that we've never seen in football a quarterback come back from. So I'm not in on him this year or any, and I also believe this is his last year playing football. So
I'm not quite as low on him as you are, but I'm also not drafting him mainly because the talent pool at quarterback is so deep for fantasy that, even if Ben Roethlisberger turns out to be pretty good, he's never really been like a top 3 fantasy quarterback. And I don't think he's going to return to that. I think the absolute ceiling for him would be like 10th. And I just don't. I agree with Justin. I don't really see that happening. And there's so many other guys that are being drafted right around him that have much higher ceilings
and much lower risk too. With him coming back from injury, being 38 years old.
Yeah, I don't really care about the age, but yeah, the injury for sure. Okay, I'll move on to the Ravens. We'll start with Lamar Jackson. Not a whole lot to say here about whether you should draft him or not. You should definitely draft Lamar Jackson if you want to go the early quarterback route. I do think that he's going a little too early in drafts. I think that I'm expecting some regression from him this season. Justin and I have been pretty vocal on the fact that we don't expect him to be the number 1 fantasy quarterback this season. I believe it's going to be Pat Mahomes. That was your bet as well for a while there, Justin. I assume it's the same.
Yep.
Last season, he had 1,206 rushing yards, which is an insane number. I think that teams are going to have an entire offseason. Coaches have been sitting at home just studying away. They're going to be scheming to stop him from running the ball. They want him to throw the ball, even though he's proven that he can do that pretty effectively. They don't want him to run the ball. I think he's going to be closer to 900 yards rushing this season, which is great. That's very high. But if they can, reduce that by like 300 yards, that's a pretty significant reduction in fantasy points. He had 7 rushing touchdowns last season. I think that number goes down a little bit closer to 5. I think his own team is going to probably be pushing for him to not run the ball as much, especially down towards that goal line where there's a higher risk of injury. You just look at like Carson Wentz a couple of years ago, tearing his ACL, diving for the end zone. They need him to be healthy because they are Super Bowl relevant, definitely Super Bowl relevant. They need a healthy quarterback though. He had only 3,127 passing yards last season, pretty anemic in the passing category for yardage. I think that number will probably go up.
I mean, that's because he also rushed for the same amount.
Not the same amount. But I do think that passing number comes up closer to 35 to 3,600 yards, which would be a pretty large improvement for him there. But unfortunately, the passing yards are not worth as much as the rushing yards. He had 36 touchdowns last season. I've got him flagged for closer to like 32 or 33 this coming season. He only had 6 interceptions last season, which is really impressive for a young guy. I think that number, there's probably some regression there. I have him closer to 10 interceptions this season. So he will not be as powerful in fantasy as he was last year, but he will still be very good, very, very good. And unfortunately, he's going too high in the draft for me to get him. But if you want to go quarterback early, Lamar Jackson has that cheat code of rushing the ball very effectively.
Yeah, and I mean, just as you're talking about with them wanting him to throw the ball more, we've seen this time and time again with these mobile quarterbacks. With like Colin Kaepernick's a perfect example, had a great year of rushing the ball, and then the team wanted to protect him a little bit more as and keep him safe and have him try and throw the ball a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And you've seen that with Russell Wilson. His first year, he ran the ball a lot more than he did after that. Still mobile, still able to get those extra yards. So, yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, he will definitely continue to rush the ball. I just think that they're going to try and like rein that in a little bit just to protect him. Yeah. It makes sense. It's good business.
Yeah, especially if you're going to pay him a lot of money here in a few years.
Right. All right. Who's your next quarterback?
I got Baker Mayfield. So 2019 Baker Mayfield had 3,800 yards, 22 touchdowns, 21 interceptions. Baker did not have an amazing year. It's no secret. You can just go watch all of his post-game press conferences and see the depression on his face. Like, that tells you how his season was. But I think 2020 is going to be a little bit more kind to him. The team did go out and get some offensive linemen that they desperately needed. Most importantly, they fired Freddie Kitchens and brought in a head coach because they did not have a head coach last year. Right. Now, I do think that the coach they brought in is going to be a run-first coach, which is, not great for Baker Mayfield, but still just the added offense is going to be beneficial to him, and you're going to see those interception numbers come down and him just look like a better quarterback. I think he's going to do quite a bit better than he did last year, but still he gets limited by the heavy running offense. I think he's going to finish probably just outside the top 12 and definitely a streamable option week to week. And it's not like a hit to knock on him for him finishing outside the top 12 because, as you stated when I was talking about Ben Roethlisberger, it's a great quarterback pool. We didn't see many of the older, very good quarterbacks retire this year, so you still have them in there that people had talked about maybe retiring. So it's just a deep quarterback pool. I think he'll have a really good year. Just he fantasy wise, he's going to be a streaming option more than a guy you're going to draft.
Yeah, I honestly think that one really big change for Baker this season is that interception number is going to drop significantly.
Absolutely.
And that's going to extend the possession for him. It's going to allow him to get more yards, more touchdowns because their possession didn't end, instantly when he threw an interception. So
and the horrible coaching that made them give up the ball after 3 downs every time.
Right, exactly. So I'm pretty high on Baker Mayfield this season. I'm pretty positive about him. I think that he's going to be much improved. Next guy, Joe Burrow. Very exciting, Joe Burrow. I think a lot of people in Cincinnati are really excited about Joe Burrow. I'm excited for Cincinnati. Andy Dalton had a few good years in there, right? It looked like he was going to be the guy, but he just never really took that next step forward. I hope that Joe Burrow is that guy for Cincinnati, just because I think that this team has had a lot of talent come through and never really reach their peak, apart from maybe AJ Green. AJ Green is still there, so we'll talk about him in a minute here. But Joe Burrow, as for a fantasy option, I know that we just keep repeating ourselves here, but with all the talent at quarterback, I don't see the reason to take a risk with Joe Burrow unless you're just hoping for, and if it sounds fun to you, right? If it sounds fun, you think that Joe Burrow is going to be amazing, go for it. I'm not going to. He's currently ranked 19th in the consensus rankings. There's so many guys that I would rather have, guys that are going really late, like Aaron Rodgers, is the 13th ranked quarterback right now. So you could get Aaron Rodgers very, very late, and you're not going to get anything horrible out of Aaron Rodgers. So
I have Joe Burrow a hair above 19, but far enough back to where I'm not drafting him.
Right. Yeah. Right. So I think that he's going to be good for the rest of the team. I think he's going to have a pretty good season. There's risk in a rookie quarterback, and I'm not willing to jump into that risk when I don't have to. I want to win a fantasy championship, and taking unnecessary risk often doesn't win you a fantasy championship. So running backs.
Yes.
All right. I know you got some gems to talk about.
I do. So I'll go ahead and get into one of them. And that's Connors from the Pittsburgh Steelers. No, so Connor had multiple injuries last season. He only played 10 games. He's 24 years old, so not the age thing isn't an issue with him. He should come back healthy this season, but the multiple injuries did show that he wasn't able to carry the workload like we had all hoped that he might be able to this season. He had 464 yards total rushing, 251 yards receiving. So he's averaging about 46 yards a game. Not great numbers before he was injured and gone. He's going a little bit high ADP wise for me because he's going as if he's going to stay healthy for the full year and shoulder the entire workhorse back load. I don't think that'll be the case. He's going to be the main back featured there, but he's not going to by any means be the only back. They have Benny Snell Jr. behind him and Jalen Samuels, and then they also drafted a rookie, McFarland, who's super late in drafts. I've taken shots on him multiple times with like my last pick in a mock draft, just because I do think that there's a chance he could end up with injuries to Connor. Snells and Samuels could end up being complementary backs to him, and maybe he finishes the year doing, putting up numbers where you could start him and you got him with your last pick. By no means am I telling you he is going to be a startable back. He's only relevant if Connor does not stay healthy. But with the knee injury and the shoulder injury to Connor, I'm just not betting on him at his current ADP, which is late second to early third round.
Sounds like somebody just drove through your house. Yeah, I'm excuse me, very similar to a few backfields that we've talked about. I'm not touching this backfield. I know James Conner has shown flashes in his career, but again, unnecessary risk in my eyes. You could get Melvin Gordon instead, and I think that's a much safer pick. Okay. For Baltimore's running backs, this one, I'm kind of interested to see how it plays out. I'm not totally sure what's going to happen here. Mark Ingram was very effective last season. He had 202 carries, which really was kind of right in his wheelhouse. It wasn't like a whole lot less. It wasn't a whole lot more. But he did reach over 1,000 yards. Not the most efficient rushing season, really, but he did just fine. He was very effective over 15 games. He didn't have to play the last game of the season. He had 10 touchdowns. I think the touchdowns will actually stay right around 10. Now, what I think he's going to drop here is probably going to be the attempts, because they went out and got J.K. Dobbins in the draft. I really like J.K. Dobbins. I think Baltimore really likes J.K. Dobbins. I think that they are going to start transitioning him towards the number one guy, probably not this season, but definitely next season. Mark Ingram will be going into his 7th or 8th season in 2020. I believe it's the 7th season.
He'll be 31 years old.
Yeah. So J.K. Dobbins will probably take more and more work as the season goes on. He could be taking like 30 or 40% of the workload right off the bat, assuming that training camp goes well. I don't really have any worry about Gus Edwards or Justice Hill taking any work. The two guys that have been there for a while, I mean, they'll get a down here or there probably, but I think the two main guys are going to be Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins. And I think Mark Ingram sees a drop in his production this season, and J.K. Dobbins probably should be owned as one of your later picks. Just stash him. It could work out really, really well. Remember, this is one of the best running teams in the NFL. And when you have a quarterback that can run as well as Lamar Jackson, it just opens up so many running lanes because they always have at least one linebacker.
Yeah, it slows the linebacker reaction down.
Right, just shadowing Lamar Jackson. His eyes are going to be pinned on Lamar Jackson, trying to figure out, did he hand the ball off or did he hold it? And that's all these NFL players need is that split second, and that opens up a huge lane there. Boom, 9-yard gain, no big deal, easy. So any running back that's playing here is fantasy relevant. They could score a touchdown. They could have a 200-day at any point. It's just figuring out which one it's going to be.
I'm actually a little bit higher. I think that they will make the transition this year to him. I think around mid-season you'll start to see like him get more of the carries. And I love Dobbins.
Yeah.
I think he's a guy that could carry you into the playoffs.
Could happen. Definitely. I would not be surprised. Okay. Let's move on to your next team.
Yes, the Browns. Back to the Browns with their running back duo. So the Browns, as I spoke about, had a switch in head coach. They brought in head coach Kevin Stefanski. Everyone loves Nick Chubb right now after seeing what Stefanski did with Dalvin Cook last year as the Vikings offensive coordinator. But I think another thing that's important to take into account is Van Pelt as the Browns offensive coordinator. We've seen him as an offensive coordinator one other time, and that was in 2009. I laugh because on my notes I put 2099. But yeah, in 2009, he's the offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. They also had two really good running backs on their team that year, Marshawn Lynch and Fred Jackson. He had about a 60-40 split between the two of these guys in carries, with Fred Jackson leading those carries. So that's kind of what I'm anticipating here. Still a run-heavy offense, but a little bit more even than what some people are expecting. So I'm saying about a 60-40 split between the best running back duo in the NFL. That's Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, in case you guys did not know that. I think that that's for carries? Yes, for carries. Kareem Hunt, obviously, he's going, like you were talking about, he's going to get worked in other interesting ways as well. And you may even see some multiple plays actually or different types of plays where they're like both on the field in different ways.
Yeah, I would say that that Kareem Hunt will probably be on the field for like 65%, maybe 70% of the snaps. And Nick Chubb will be out there for a lot of those as well. And
the one reason why I think that might not be the case is they are looking to switch to run two tight end sets as well, which will cut that back a little bit. But still, I mean, both of them are going to be out there, but the carry differential between them is probably 60-40, in my opinion. And I think that's going to have Chubb finishing somewhere between the running back 5 and 8, which unfortunately is slightly lower than where his ADP is going with in a lot of these drafts. So you might not get him if you're trying to get him to where I think he'll be valued. But I think that's okay because you could still grab Kareem Hunt, who has standalone value, who I actually think is being undervalued. So I think the two of them, and if you could get both of them, that's amazing. And even if you reach for Chubb, I'm okay with that too, to get him a little bit higher than that. Because if either one of these guys gets injured, the other guy is skyrocketing up to probably a top 3 running back from there forward in the season. So I love both these running backs. They're both super talented in a great system. Everything is perfect for these guys to just kill it this year.
Great. So Cincinnati running backs. Really, there's two. There's one that will be fantasy owned and relevant. There's one that will be annoying at times. So Joe Mixon, I know a lot of people are very, very high on Joe Mixon right now. Currently, he is I think he's like 5th what is he? Seventh. Consensus ranked seventh running back. Dalvin Cook has moved ahead of him. I know that they're kind of flopping back and forth right now. Oh. I think I'd rather have Dalvin Cook than Joe Mixon.
That's so upsetting for me to hear.
But right behind him, Nick Chubb, who we just talked about, Josh Jacobs, and Aaron Jones. I think I want Joe Mixon more than any of those three. Josh Jacobs gives me pause, but I would take Joe Mixon over Nick Chubb and Aaron Jones for sure. So that being said, the reason that I'd want like Dalvin Cook ahead of him, and the reason that I would want or think about taking Josh Jacobs ahead of him is there were a few games last season that were impressively bad, where he had 10 carries for 2 yards, where he had 19 carries for 44 yards. He didn't score a touchdown a rushing touchdown until week 11 last season. Now I know his team was really bad, and I know the quarterback play was really bad. So clearly,
and the offensive line was atrocious.
Yeah. Clearly, like it will improve, but there are guys like Saquon Barkley who have been on really terrible teams as well. True. And still been able to produce to some degree. And so I worry, like there's a little bit of pause there where it's like, man, I'm not ready to anoint this guy as a possible top 5 running back like some other people are. I'm not quite there yet. Now, that being said, I think that if you're drafting later, right, you have like the 10th pick, 11th pick or something like that, and Joe Mixon falls to you, you'll be very pleased with getting him because he has the potential. He does. I'm pumping the brakes just a little bit on Joe Mixon.
Yeah, there's definitely more risk than the guys who are being drafted as a top 3 running back.
Well, I would say that there's more risk in him than there is in like Dalvin Cook, who has dealt with injuries. But I would say Dalvin Cook is probably even safer than him, and Josh Jacobs might even be safer than him.
Oh, I agree with you on both those because those are guys we've seen do it.
Right, and Josh Jacobs, there's nobody's touching his job. And Giovanni Bernard, while did not get a whole lot of work last season, they did sign him to another deal. They want him there. They want him involved in some way. He's a great pass catching running back. And unfortunately, I mean, Joe Mixon's a good pass catching running back too, but if they don't have to use him all the time, they'll use Gio Bernard. And so there's a little bit of worry there that's it. I know it sounds like I'm a Joe Mixon hater. I'm not. I'm just a little bit hesitant to jump on full board.
No, so I completely agree with you, and I love Joe Mixon. I was like all in on Joe Mixon early in this offseason. But his ADP is creeping up there to probably where I have him valued now, to where it's like, all right, I like Joe Mixon now.
Right. I think he'll have a great season. I hope he does. I hope he stays healthy. I might take Josh Jacobs instead, right? And Josh Jacobs is going quite a bit later. So you could get both, honestly.
Because you're probably on the back end of your draft. And I've had I want to say in one of our mock drafts we put up, I think I had both of them.
Yeah. And if that's the case, man, you're in great shape. I just don't take Joe Mixon with like the 5th pick. Just don't do that. I would not recommend that.
Yeah. You're not going to be happy.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to wide receivers.
Let's do it.
We're creeping along here. We gotta pick up the pace. We're having too much fun.
I know. We can't have fun. That's not allowed.
Yeah.
It's a podcast, dang it.
Stop laughing.
I can't do that. All right, so wide receivers, Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously, you have Juju Smith-Schuster. He's probably the main wide receiver there that anyone's thinking about, anyone's talking about. You're going to hear discussions and disputes on how he is. All right, so I'm going to start with him. 2019 was supposed to be the year of Juju. Antonio Brown left. Juju was there, primed for his breakout, going to kill it and astonish the world. I tried to warn everyone that I did not think this was going to happen. It did not. Juju had he finished the year with 42 receptions, 552 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He had 70 out of the 510 targets for their team. That's 13% of the targets. He also only played in 10 games because he got hurt. Which, I mean, yeah, his numbers would probably be higher if he didn't get hurt, but the injury is a whole nother issue in itself. The fact that he got hurt. I think he's improving from last year. I don't think that there's any way he's getting worse from there with Big Ben coming back, already having that connection with him. I think that he'll probably be a high to mid range wide receiver 2. But unfortunately, that's not where he's being drafted at. He's being drafted as if he's going to be a wide receiver 1, and I'm not touching him there. Like, I just can't have Juju Smith-Schuster, like, the rock on my team as the receiving core. Do you have any thoughts on it, Perry, before I move to these other guys?
I think part of the reason that he was injured so long last season was because the team was not really a contender, and they just kept him out, to be completely honest with you. But I'm not super worried about the injury risk, but I am a little bit worried about him being the number 1 guy and not being able to handle the double coverage. So
absolutely.
But I hope he's good because I really like him.
I know, right? That's the thing. Yeah. He's such a good person. I want to say kid, but he's an adult. But he's such a good guy. Like, I want to root for him and I want him to do great. It's just the situation there for him I'm not happy about. So it's horrible. But anyway, they also have James Washington, Deontay Johnson, and drafted Chase Claypool. I think they're all very talented wide receivers, but unfortunately, there's going to be too many mouths for that offense to sustain. So I don't think any of these guys are going to be sure shot number 2 wide receivers that break out this year. That being said, if I had to guess on one of them, which one might break out and be that guy, I would say Deontay Johnson is my guy. I'm grabbing him, and I'm rolling with that. I've done it late in a couple drafts, and I'm okay with him. If I'm guessing on a guy, if it's any sort of dynasty, probably going with Claypool as the rookie wide receiver. He'll be there longer. Hopefully they could bring in a new quarterback after Big Ben's era, and he can still be the guy there.
Yeah. All right. Wide receivers for Baltimore. This one's pretty easy. There's one guy.
Yeah, it's like wide receivers.
Marquis Brown, Hollywood Brown. Honestly, Hollywood Brown is very interesting to me this season because he's still going pretty late in a lot of drafts, and I don't have to get him as the number 1 or number 2. And after my number 1 and number 2, I start looking for like potential really high value picks, and Marquis Brown could be that guy. He was very, very good to start 2019, and then he started getting hurt. And if he stays healthy, man, there's no reason why he can't be fantasy relevant all season. Especially, if we expect Lamar Jackson, a lot of people expect him to be very, very good again.
And to throw the ball more.
Right. There's got to be a wide receiver there catching touchdowns. I know that there's a great tight end there who I'll talk about in a minute, but there's got to be a wide receiver there catching touchdowns. Willie Sneed.
I was going to say, are you not feeling the Sneed?
I feel the need. Willie Sneed, he's unownable. I'm sorry. If Marquise Brown were to go down for any reason, I guess you could try. Willie Sneed has had success in his career, but no, unfortunately, the only guy there is Marquise Brown. If you're going to have a quarterback throw for under 3,500 yards, the options at wide receiver get really, really thin.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
That's it. I mean, to grab Marquise Brown as your 4th wide receiver, and hope that works out, and there's a fair chance that it will.
And Marquise Brown does remind me a little bit like again, we both talked about how we hate comparing like young players to established player, but he has had a full year in the NFL. And looking back to another player's first year in the NFL, he does remind me a little bit of a Tyreek Hill in his explosiveness and ability to get open and catch the ball. So I do like him. I think that he has a lot of value at where he's going.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
I got the Browns wide receivers. They actually have 2 sustainable wide receivers there. Impressive after talking about Baltimore. So they got okay, so first of all, for the 5th time in 6 years, Odell Beckham Jr. was able to generate 200 fantasy points, while Beckham had decent fantasy value. You're probably disappointed in him with where you drafted him at. His output was lackluster at best, and then what made it worse was the coaching there. Like the coaching, as I've talked about, and for every position here so far, was horrible. So it did not help the situation or help the wide receivers as a whole to be successful. That has changed again, how I said, and I think I expect an improvement from Baker, which means I also expect improvement in the wide receiver core as a whole. They did bring in Hooper, who may take a few of the targets away as a whole from the wide receiver core. But I'm not so much worried for Odell Beckham in that category. I don't think this affects him too much. And I think he's going to increase from the 4 touchdowns he had in 2019 quite a bit. So I think that he's definitely a great target at where he's going. I want to say he's going in the 3rd or 4th round right now, which I'm okay with having Odell Beckham as my number 1 wide receiver over Juju Smith-Schuster. I think that's a much more safe pick.
That is a no-brainer.
Yeah, and he's being drafted after him, so.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. I've taken Odell in quite a few mock drafts and been very happy with how my team worked out.
Yeah, and then the second wide receiver on their team is Jarvis Landry. I feel like I'm obligated after every time I say Jarvis Landry's name to also say that he is a PPR monster. It just comes with saying Jarvis Landry. He finished as the wide receiver 14 last year, ahead of Odell Beckham Jr. He was the number 1 wide receiver for the Browns last year. He had over 220 fantasy points, so not a huge amount more than Odell, but still, he was drafted way later in drafts. He's moved up draft boards quite a bit since then. Still a good value for where you could get him, though. And I expect the team to score more touchdowns, which is going to help him. I do think that bringing in Hooper will affect him more than it's going to affect Odell Beckham as more of a PPR and possession guy, and he gets targeted more inside the red zone than Odell did. So the 2 tight end sets and Hooper especially is going to affect him a little bit, but I still expect him to have a slight improvement from where he did last year, and he'll probably finish below Odell Beckham, but still a startable week-to-week wide receiver.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, I actually really like Odell this season. He's very, very high on my list because the value is so good.
I know a lot of people I talk to when I'm just out at work, talking to people after last year, thought that I just hated Odell Beckham Jr. because before I talked really negative about him. And they're like, oh, you just hate Odell Beckham. I'm like, I don't. I just hate the situation. Now I like it quite a bit more. So I actually like him more than most people now.
Okay, Cincinnati wide receivers. AJ Green is still there. I've made my feelings on AJ Green pretty clear. Last season, I told you guys from the beginning that he would not touch the field, and he didn't. Now this season, all reports are good. All reports are that he is healthy, he is 100%, and he is working out. I actually like AJ Green a little bit this season just because of the value. Again, there's high risk with AJ Green, but you don't have to take him as your number 1 or number 2 wide receiver. And every season that he's played where he was on the field, he's finished as a top 12 wide receiver. He's only going to be 31 years old, or he's 31 years old, which isn't ancient for a wide receiver, right? He's got probably a good 2 to 3 solid prime seasons for what a normal wide receiver prime would be. And you could argue that Joe Burrow will be the best quarterback he's ever played with, assuming Joe Burrow lives up to the hype. Andy Dalton did have good seasons. Okay, I know everybody loves to hate Andy Dalton, but he did have some good seasons. But all arrows are pointing to Joe Burrow possibly being better than Andy Dalton ever was. And AJ Green could really benefit from that. He's on a franchise tag, which means he's wanting to get paid, right? He needs to perform if he wants to get that one final contract. And so he's hungry. I expect him to go out there hungry and play hard and put everything into it, which I understand those are not measurables in any way, but I do think it matters. As long as he stays healthy, AJ Green will be fantasy relevant. I promise you that. Now, Tyler Boyd, this is kind of like is this the Chris Godwin moment for Tyler Boyd? Is he going to surpass AJ Green?
Well, I mean, he did last year.
Sure, but AJ Green didn't play. So I'm not willing to anoint Tyler Boyd as the number 1 wide receiver on that team yet. I'm not willing to do it. I still think it's AJ Green. And I would rather have AJ Green on my team than Tyler Boyd, fantasy-wise. John Ross. I know that John Ross had moments last season, but I'm not buying into John Ross whatsoever. He's boom bust, and he's a high injury risk. So it's like picking the day that he's going to play and also put up insane points like he did like twice or 3 times last season. I'm not willing to roll the dice on that, and I don't recommend any of you do so either. And T. Higgins, the rookie wide receiver that was drafted there, not right away, but somebody definitely to pay attention to,
and
right?
Especially Dynasty.
Right. Him and Joe Burrow are going to come up together. They're going to learn together. They're going to work together to become better as they grow older.
I like to use the word flourish. They're going to flourish together.
Yeah. So not somebody I'm interested in right away, but definitely somebody I'm going to be paying attention to. Dynasty leagues, definitely own T. Higgins. Don't let him slip through the draft because he will not last long on free agency. I guarantee you that much. Okay, Justin, we got tight ends, and
yeah, we do.
We're like an hour right now.
Yeah,
maybe you do, man. Quarantine's got me. Never mind.
All right, I'm gonna start with the Browns tight end. Switch it up a little bit here. So I got. So I talked about it already. Kevin Stefanski. Taking over the offense. I brought it up a bunch of times, right? So he's going to have his influence there on the team. He's already talked about how he wants to run a 2 tight end set. He brought in Austin Hooper and made him the highest paid tight end in the NFL. Don't know why that was a need they felt they needed to address, but they did. So he's there now, right? And they also have a second tight end with Njoku. They're going to be running both those guys. Njoku hasn't quite lived up to his hype as being drafted in the first round. But I didn't think that like tight ends generally take a little while to break out. So I wasn't disappointed in Njoku yet. But they felt like they needed that address, so they brought him in. Hooper So Stefanski came from the Vikings, who had the second highest rate in 2 tight end sets, 54.8% of offensive plays. I'm not really big on either of these tight ends due to that, though, because they're going to take from each other's value. Hooper killed it last year, so his ADP is going up really high. So everyone has the recency bias where they remember what he did last year. They're not thinking about his situation to this year. So I'm probably just not drafting either one of these guys just because their ADP is going up way too high for where they're actually going to perform.
Yeah, 100%. Okay. This next one will be pretty easy for me. Baltimore's tight end, Mark Andrews, or as Justin likes to say, Mark Handrews.
Yes.
I think it's the worst nickname, man.
I didn't come up with it.
I
Handrews did.
Really like Mark Andrews. Really like Mark Andrews a lot. I liked him last season. I had him on my team. It was wonderful. I don't expect him to slow down all that much this season, to be honest with you. I think he's going to skyrocket. His snap percentage was extremely low. I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but it was very low, his snap percentage, and I think that that's going to go up significantly, which it's just going to give him more opportunity to score. He is one of 3 guys that could finish as the number 1 overall tight end this season. I don't think anybody else is going to come close to these 3 guys. And those 3 guys are Travis Kelce, George Kittle, and Mark Andrews. If Mark Andrews finished ahead of those other 2, I would not be surprised whatsoever. So Mark Andrews, I'll be targeting him in some leagues, but he is going very early, and it's going to be kind of hard for me to get him, as I usually don't go tight end early unless I'm going at tight end very early.
I will say the nice thing about him, though, is he is going a couple rounds after those first 2.
Right. If you can get him in the 5th round, which is a big stretch, but if you can get him in the 5th round, that is an auto draft. If you have your 2 running backs and 2 wide receivers, you go that like standard draft route, and Mark Andrews is sitting there, say the first pick in the 5th round, auto draft Mark Andrews.
I don't care if I have 3 running backs and 1 wide receiver. I'm going Mark Andrews in that situation.
Yeah. That's all. I don't want to talk about the other tight ends.
All right. Speaking of tight ends you don't want to talk about, I got the Steelers tight ends here.
What do you mean? You don't want to do the Vance dance?
It's a sad dance, Perry.
It's a sad dance. It's a sad dance alone in the rain.
Yeah, it's a sad, slow dance in the rain.
Alone.
All by yourself.
Alone.
Yeah. Under just one street light. That's it. So Vance Mcdonald led the Steelers tight ends last year.
So we weren't wrong.
Yeah, 2019, 273 yards and 3 touchdowns. Some rock star numbers there. With Roethlisberger slated to return, I still don't care. I'm not in on Vance McDonald anymore. His value is going to increase, but I just don't care. There's so many other tight ends out there that you could grab that are much safer picks than Vance McDonald. Sure, he could end up being a top 7, 8 tight end, but I'd rather bet on probably 12 other guys. So I'm not in on him.
Yeah, great analysis. CJ Uzomah, tight end for Cincinnati. I'm gonna say
on
what
the pronunciation. I would have slaughtered that.
CJ Uzomah?
Yeah.
That one's easy. Listen, this is the only analysis I need, and then we can end the show right after I say this. Seattle has 3 tight ends I'd rather have than CJ Uzomah. Good night, everybody.
My freaking mouse froze in spot. I can click, but I can't move it to stop. Come on. What are you doing, mouse? Why?
Seattle literally does have 3 other tight ends that are currently ranked higher than CJ Uzomah.
Why is my mouse not working, though? This is ridiculous.
I don't know.
Supposed to stop the recording?
Just hit it harder. That seems to be working.
No, I had to get the batteries out.
This is my light.
There are many like it.
Well, that's kind of weird. Are you watching this?
Yeah. Why is
No, you're not.
Kinda.
Okay. I want to go say goodnight to Kinsey and stuff.
Okay, I'm going to work on stopping this recording.
All right, I'm going to hang up Skype. Maybe that'll help. All right, have a good night, dude.
Peace.